Mental Health Mondays ignite the spark. Hope guides each step, even in the dark. New week, new dreams to see. Hope's the key to what's meant to be. Mental Health Mondays ignite the spark. Hope guides each step, even in the dark. New week, new dreams to see. Hope's the key to what's meant to be.
Happy Monday, everyone. I hope you had a great weekend. Mondays are always, well, Sundays technically, but Mondays are always the start of the week. Welcome to Mental Health Mondays with Hope. My name is Hope, and you are on the PA Empowerment Network. You will see a subscribe button show up every now and again on this live broadcast, which will then continue to remain on our channel on YouTube. So make sure you check us out, the PA Empowerment Network, and go ahead and subscribe. We have a bunch of great programs on here, and we would love your feedback. Anyway, my name is Hope. I'm the host of Mental Health Mondays, and today we have Christine Higgins with us, and we're going to talk about trauma and how it affects our everyday life, and maybe some strategies that will help us move forward with that. So I'd like to welcome our guest, Christine Higgins. Hey, there she is.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
Good. So now I don't know, because from my vantage point, I can't see as well. Did you put your credentials at the bottom of the screen?
No, I did not.
Okay, so can you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and include your credentials and your background?
Okay. So my name is Christine Higgins. I have worked in the mental health field for what will be 20 years in January. I have my master's in psychology. I'm currently a therapist, and I've worked in many different aspects of the mental health world through my career.
Awesome. Yes, you've been doing this a long time. You don't look old enough to be doing it for 20 years. Come on now.
Newly 45, so.
I was going to say, by the way, happy belated birthday.
Thank
Happy
you.
belated birthday. You're welcome. So today we're going to talk about trauma and how that affects us daily. Last week we had a great program as well. We talked about the Epstein survivors, the press conference they had, and how them coming out and speaking about their sexual abuse, the trauma they received, how that will affect the movement, if you want to call it that, and also people who have experienced trauma. So, this is a great kind of a continuation of what we talked about last week. So, how can we define trauma? Is there an overall definition of trauma?
I'm sure there technically is, yes. But how I usually explain it, I haven't actually looked at the true definition in quite a while now, is trauma can be anything that impacts you so much that it actually can affect your behavior going forward because of it. So if it's something that impacts you so much that you do something different because of that scenario, it's likely some level of trauma.
Right. Now, I mean, we can do positive things that affect
Absolutely.
how we react to things, but trauma is the opposite.
Exactly. It's usually more negative, harmful things that we put into place as defense mechanisms because of whatever had happened.
Right.
That it's considered, and they don't really use this word anymore, but I don't know how better to explain it. Maladaptive. It's maladaptive behaviors instead of adaptive, which is the positive, right?
Right.
So it's maladaptive changes, which leads to us blocking some of the good things in our life, actually, at the end of the day, because we're taking a different route to defend ourselves, potentially
Right.
blocking that opportunity.
Right, right. Now, a lot of times, when we talk about medicine, we talk about medicine being a disease model rather than a healing model. Like it looks at the approach as at a disease level, whereas it's
Yes.
not as proactive. And I would think that trauma is almost at a disease level as well. Hear me out. Because how do we actually prepare people in advance? Like, if your family is prone to having heart disease, then there are things that you can do that are proactive. Are there proactive ways, um, before trauma would ever occur, that we can learn how to handle trauma?
Yes, actually, there is. Some of that comes with emotional maturity. Um, so sometimes it's really hard. That's where children are more prone to effects from trauma. Not that anybody is prone, can be affected by trauma, but children are still learning what even a defense mechanism is, if they even get that far. Like, they don't understand the behavior at all. But once we're a little more emotionally mature, we do begin to understand behavior, because it kind of goes hand in hand.
Right, right,
So, at that point, we can be more proactive in making sure that we're checking in with ourselves, being true to ourselves, doing things, to reduce our stress levels, mindfulness activities, meditation, that kind of stuff. Whatever that might mean to you. It doesn't have to be formal meditation. It could just be going and sitting and looking at the countryside for a little while.
right,
But doing those things that are not only feeding our body but also our soul
right.
at our core emotional level.
Sure. And since we're talking about children right now, we have the different levels of development, like Maslow being one
Hmm.
example. Um, how are children affected, or adults affected, if they don't proceed through those levels of development in a positive manner? Like, would that be considered traumatic if they don't make it through the levels of development in a positive way?
Most likely, yes. I mean, and can I account for every possible scenario? No, but generally speaking, if you're not going to positively make it through one of those levels, that there is something happening to you in your life, that either you're not adapting well, or in a positive way, so that it leads you sometimes down a not so great road, we'll say.
Sure.
Or just where your mindset isn't there to even look for those opportunities, those positive things. You're so focused on the negative because you're so fearful. You're
Right.
protecting yourself so hard that you're missing out. You're missing the
Right.
other things. So yeah, it doesn't mean that it's you know uh, this destructive path all the time. No. Um, but just the negativity that comes with that alone can be
Right.
harmful to our daily lives.
Right. And you said something earlier that, with children, that they haven't learned coping mechanisms yet. Is it
Right.
also fair to say that a child may not even recognize that they did not triumph over the levels of development?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
I believe I hear what you're saying. Like, so I'm trying to put it in different words. So for a child not having the coping mechanisms, not also recognizing, where they've been able to utilize these things in a positive way to help them to continue to do so. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're looking at a level of development where what you should be getting is love and security and safety from your family life, from your parents, and you don't necessarily get that as a child, you don't maybe necessarily understand that that is something you missed. I'll use an example.
I
If you're
see what you're
yeah,
saying. not
So like,
having the enough knowledge to even understand that they did miss a step or miss
right,
a security that was needed, a
right,
foundational part of those milestones.
right. I
Yeah,
think of failure to launch as an example of that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that can have huge impacts because the child again doesn't even know that exists because they never got it. Therefore, their main foundation was not built fully.
Right,
They're not standing on a solid foundation.
right,
So without standing on that solid foundation, things are not going to always fall into place because you got holes, you
right,
know? So with it, if you think about it, like that's visually speaking, but basically their mechanism is going to be more self-soothing. They may isolate more. They may fear connection and um, uh, togetherness kind of thing. They may shy away from that family. They may shy away from even as far as like going to loyalty because they don't understand what that truly means either.
right,
So, and that can make for a very problematic future, for as a child is growing into adolescent, adulthood, relationships come into play. And this is where we have a lot of toxicity, we'll say, within relationships because they're lacking the knowledge of how to even have and build that foundation of one because they were not given that foundation.
right, right.
They
And
have
not
no
just,
knowledge of what that looks like.
sure, and not just romantic relationships, but that
Hmm.
could be work relationships, friend relationships.
The level
Um,
of trust is not going to be there.
right, right. Okay.
Trust
So,
is going to be a huge issue for them.
oh, absolutely. I know, and I apologize. I'm like just completely picking your brain here tonight.
No.
So as a therapist, how is it that you, before we really get on to like now you recognize that they have trauma, as a therapist, how do you then learn where they are developmentally and where they may be lacking? Because some of the things that, we're going to talk about are strategies. So as a therapist, how do you walk them through that? How do you figure that out?
So, I mean, it's a lot of just getting to know you and asking the right questions. I mean, when we start with somebody where we're doing therapy, you do what's called a biopsychosocial, which is an assessment that gathers a lot of information about all different things through life, including did you even meet your milestones as far as your walking, talking, eating, that stuff. It goes into some family history and that kind of thing as well. So that gives us a little bit of a background on what might be going on as well, or where something might be coming from. And then it's just asking the questions into that. Like, so what was your family life like? What do you remember? How are your relationships? By little different things that are going on within their life. Let's say they can't hold down a job. That tells us something that's coming from somewhere, right?
Right.
It doesn't have to always be relationships, but a lot of trauma stuff is then seen, unfortunately, residual in relationships because the people that we're closest with are who's going to see the most. So
Right.
there's always going to be some conflict with that. But like, I'm sorry, I went off topic there for a second, off kilter
No.
for a
That's
second.
okay. That's okay.
So, all right, take somebody with ADHD like myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes, that's if somebody is not, say, holding down a job, they're jumping from project to project, or they jump from job to job. They're getting in trouble for, not being on time all the time. Like there's a lot of different little cues into somebody's life. I could take aspects of work life and say, okay, that's indicative of this if everything else kind of fits. It takes
Right.
more than just that information to make a diagnosis at all, because there's way more that goes into that. However, that gives us tips to look in a specific direction.
Right, right. And often just for you specifically, do clients come with you already with a list of diagnoses, or do you find yourself recommending that they see a psychiatrist or a psychologist because you suspect something?
So, the way it works where I'm working, so I am the first person usually they would see. I do their intake, which means I do their biopsychosocial. Many people do come already having diagnoses, already on meds, that does happen. But we do also get the people who have not been in services before and have never gotten that diagnosis. So I do what we call like the preliminary diagnosis. So I write down what it is that I think from my conversation, and then I take those points out, like, this is why I think this. And that goes to the psychiatrist, because they will at least have one visit with the psychiatrist. They don't want meds. They don't necessarily have to see them again, but there has to be one visit within our practice.
Right.
So the psychiatrist will then actually solidify or change or whatever it is, that diagnosis, and sign off on it. And that becomes the diagnosis then. So that's the procedure we go through. So the therapists kind of do it, but the psychiatrists have to approve or disapprove, for a final actual diagnosis.
Right. And, I want to just kind of make a comment here, because a lot of times the social sciences are considered a soft science. But, as you said, that you had to say why you thought this. So we call that AEBs, as evidenced by. And, AEBs are used in the medical community as well. So we are valid as counselors, as therapists, in the mental health profession. We do use a scientific approach, but then our therapies, if you want to call it that, are still considered, still scientific, but then they're a little bit different than, we're going to put a cast on your broken arm.
It looks different than, like, say, a physical health type of remedy in many circumstances. Unfortunately, with mental health, it's not something that you see. And, we have to really listen to the patient and, take what they're saying and understand where it might be coming from. I'm trying to get to there is a variance within that science, so to speak. Yes, absolutely. Because there is opinion that comes into play to some degree, but it's educated opinion, and we do have to prove why. So, and if that does not make sense medically necessary, as the criteria would show, then the psychiatrist is the one who will stop that, and that won't go through if that's the case. Right. That's the point of having that checks and balance there.
Right. And I think of the diagnosis of bipolar disorder as something that, that's something that cannot be diagnosed overnight. That's something that has to show a pattern over a long period of time, because even, major depressive disorder can be over a long period of time. But, with bipolar disorder, sometimes this may not be going on recently, but, when I was just doing finishing my schooling, there were some providers who were diagnosing bipolar disorder after meeting someone the first time. And, that's not something that can be diagnosed. That's not something like a sprain or a strain, that can be diagnosed the first time that you're meeting with somebody. That's behaviors that happen over a period of time.
Absolutely. And a lot of the diagnoses are the same way. It's not, there's a few things, even take schizophrenia. Okay. You see somebody for the first time, they're having a psychotic episode. How do you know that that's schizophrenia, which pretty much stays continued in that direction, right? Or an episode that can come with bipolar, can come with depression, can come from a medication.
Absolutely.
So how do you determine that? You cannot make that absolute diagnosis. In many times, what I've seen happen in those circumstances would be, like, say, for bipolar, it would be unspecified mood disorder. We see there's a mood thing going on. We're in that direction, but we're not pinpointing it. We don't have the longevity to pinpoint that.
Right.
And then eventually that gets changed over to whatever the actual diagnosis becomes from the patterns.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, patterns can be seen across the board, and that's honestly what solidifies any diagnosis is in the pattern.
Right, right, absolutely. And so, we'll move back onto trauma because, as we're talking about this, we're talking about it doesn't always look the same for everyone. It could be, the same diagnosis, but it looks different for other people. So the same is with trauma. Different
Mhm.
things can cause trauma for different individuals and at varying levels. Um,
Absolutely.
so how is it that you come to a place with trauma, where you know how severely it is affecting them on a regular basis, or how they've learned to cope with it, or masking it? I mean, I feel like coping and masking may look very similar.
hmm it's something that you really have to ask. There's a lot of questions to ask, and um, it's not something you can tell in one session. You know what I mean? Like, just like we were saying with bipolar, you need um, some longevity to something, and the same even with trauma. Sometimes somebody's impacted briefly, more so, and get given the therapy and the things that will help them to heal themselves. They improve, and they don't necessarily take that into a longer maladaptive behavior. Um, some people, they avoid getting any help. They don't talk about it. They shut down and they hold this inside for so long that eventually it comes out in some way.
Right.
And that can be anything from social anxiety to complete flashbacks, like you
Right.
would, like you see with the war vets from the videos. That can happen from any kind of trauma.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. I think our brain is amazing. I think our brain does this. It's so fragile yet so resilient. I said
Hmm.
that from, working in Jerry Psych, how protective our brain is of us, but it can be so fragile. Again, when we talk about schizophrenia, um, our brain protects us, but like you said, we could then have some sort of a flashback. Or I always kind of jokingly say it about myself. I need to defrag my hard drive, meaning get some of this stuff out and go through it, so it's not cluttered up in my brain, all compartmentalized in these different compartments, because eventually those compartments will be full.
Yeah.
And then what?
Yeah. I mean, well, and then what? At that point, that's when, typically most people who would have ignored it and not been proactive, like getting therapy right away, knowing that, hey, something traumatic happened to me, let me get some help. Um, Somebody who doesn't go through the more proactive, and they don't even accept that anything is a problem until there is a problem.
Right.
Um, Unfortunately, I hate to put it that way, but that's what we do. I've done it myself. I think we're all guilty in some way or some
Absolutely.
level. You
Absolutely.
know, you let something boil up and we end up screaming at somebody that didn't deserve it. I think
Right.
we've all probably done that at least once. You
Sure.
know, um, Same concept. The boiling water will overflow. Like it's gonna pop out the pot.
Right. Right.
Like you can't stop that at that point. Like something is going to occur that then pushes you to say, hey, you need some help here.
Right, right. And I think sometimes, and again, we're both in the same field. Sometimes people may not recognize, or they're not ready to unleash what the potential reaction to their trauma, to their overall trauma can be, and they'll blame, like, whatever the issue is, on other people or other things, as a way of coping, and not actually reaching in to see where the true trauma came from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what's at the core of that is what you're getting at. So that's one of the things that I talk about a lot with the people who I serve. Um, we got to get to the core of the issue. What's the underlying thing there? And it's not so much about what the trauma was. It's what did that trauma affect? What is the first basic core value or principle within you, right? So we're looking for that we need to go at. Let's just say it's something that knocks somebody's self-worth, right? So we're talking self-esteem. You have to once you figure that out, then it's okay, how do we rebuild this self-esteem? And you have to start putting those things in place. you're rewiring your whole brain to think in a different way, because in that sense, you are typically thinking negative about yourself all the time, and you have to change that script. You have to rewrite the script that you tell to yourself.
Right.
You know, it's there's so many things I could spur off of that. So, once we are able to acknowledge that, then we can also acknowledge the behaviors that we exhibit because of feeling a lack, right? So, are we shunning people away from us because we're fearful of their judgment? Are we over giving, over pleasing, and giving too much of ourselves and never getting enough in return because we're looking for love in the wrong way, in a sense.
Right.
Not necessarily always meaning love. That could be admiration, maybe is a better word. We're looking for that outside validation because we have not been able to validate ourselves.
Right.
We have to learn to validate ourselves. You have to learn to sit in your own truth. But you have to also be very willing to look at yourself so that you can be self-aware in everything that you do. Because once you could recognize that this behavior, it has actually hurt you, you can then modify that behavior into something that is helpful to you, but yet still protects you.
Right.
And it be healthy and move you in a better direction so that you can open your eyes to some better things.
Right. And, I've seen also, and, I did it myself when I was younger because I've said on the show before, I have a lot of trauma in my childhood, and I burned a lot of bridges when I was younger. That's what I'll call it. Burned a lot of bridges, walked away from a lot of people and situations, because there's that trauma. I wasn't ready to recognize or deal with that yet. And, because I've learned that in myself, that's something I really try to help other people understand. That's not necessarily the best thing to do, because whether it's a friend, whether it's a job, what have you, it's always going to be another one. But is there going to be another one that was that fit for you? Because you've pushed it away. And so how are ways that can, that individuals can do themselves, and maybe exercises to overcome? Can people do this without the help of a therapist at all? Like, I know that's coming from, it's kind of, I am pro therapy for everything. It doesn't mean you have to be in therapy for the rest of your life.
I think that if it's somebody who is truly willing to put the work in on themselves and look in the right direction for some guidance, at least, I don't see why they can't. But I wouldn't advise it. I would say it that way. I would advise having somebody there, even if it's, not saying every week, even. It doesn't have to be weekly therapy for that. But just to kind of check in on, and hey, this is kind of what I've learned and how I've handled it. Does this seem like I'm going in the right direction here? Kind of thing. And, do you have any other, suggestions, something I missed, whatever. It's somebody to even have that conversation, because until you don't know until you know. And sometimes that brainstorming and just comes up with some things that you wouldn't have thought of on your own. And having the support, because sometimes you hit a spot that you got to heal that, is a tough one, and it brings out some emotions, and, there's some bumps in the road through the process.
Right.
So I would recommend having somebody there, but can somebody become more self-aware and put themselves on a better path without? Absolutely. With the right, determination and, at least seeking some guidance so that they're not just kind of, shooting at the wind.
Right. And again, we go back to have we made it through all of our levels of development, properly? If we don't know that there is an issue, or, what caused the trauma or what have you, I feel that the self-diagnosis with mental health is more difficult than it is with medical. And I'm not dissing medical at all. But when I fell into that ravine and I had that big old bump on my wrist, I was able to be very confident when I stated to the doctor that I broke my arm. So mental health is not exactly the same, because as a child, I was molested from the time I was 4 until the time I was 13. When I was still 10, 11 years old, I did not realize that that was not normal. So it
Yeah.
wasn't until I got older to where I talked with other people. Not that we talked about that, but until I got a little older and I saw the interactions with other people to recognize that what was happening to me was not normal. So, it's difficult when it's within ourselves that we've been behaving that way for so long, for us to recognize that it might not be the healthiest behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's definitely, I wouldn't necessarily advise self-diagnosing. It doesn't mean that you can't give your opinions, because your opinions matter and they still help. But yes, in some circumstances, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So like Hope said, and if you don't know that that's even a thing, then you wouldn't know to include it in your thought process.
Right.
So,
right.
In that sense, when you're looking at going forth with diagnosis, because, it's not just a self-help, like, let me get myself on a better path kind of thing that's going on, then yeah, to have somebody there to make sure that you're even doing the right things for whatever you really do have going on with you. Like, we want to, if you want to help yourself, then you want to do so in a way that's going to help you the most, because, what's the point of putting all that work in if you're not getting all of the reward?
Right. And trauma is as complex as, as the human body, or as nature, or the world. So everybody's trauma is going to be different. Even if they've experienced the same thing that caused the trauma, or a similar situation, we're going to just talk sexual abuse. Two different people are going to experience, like, how they come out of that is going to be different. They're both going to have trauma, but how they react to that and how they're best able to be helped to move forward is going to be different. So, there's a lot going on there, but are there some basic self-awareness or exercises or overcoming examples or things that you can say or people can do? I know, when I had Lauren on here last week, we talked about, talking to somebody that comes to you and says that they were sexually assaulted, and the best 3 words that you can say immediately and often is, "I believe you." And if an individual starts with those words, their trajectory will be different. So are there some basics that can help anyone at whatever level of trauma, like whatever level of healing they are with trauma, that can help them on a positive trajectory?
Yeah, I think that number one, trusting your instinct, because I think that in many circumstances, maybe not all, trauma does affect our inner guidance, because we feel like we were wrong on something. And so we don't trust ourselves as much, our own instinct, because we internalize it, we personalize it. So learning to be able to trust ourselves again, listen to our gut instinct, and change our behaviors based upon that, is a start. Also, meditation, sit with yourself, think, look, how are you feeling? Acknowledge how you're feeling, understand, try to understand yourself to the deepest level possible. Getting to know yourself is vital. Just de-stressing type activities, so whatever that might be for you, but like, again, meditation can be one, yoga can be another, horseback riding can be one, whatever it is, but something that you can do that you just kind of de-stress, don't worry about the world for a little bit, and get outside of that, give yourself a breather from carrying that burden, and giving yourself grace. Give yourself grace. It is a process, it's a journey, it is not linear, it'll go round and round. I kind of like to look at healing like a spiral staircase. As you heal, you're going up another level, seeing things from a different perspective along the way, and being able to look down at even some of the same things that you thought you healed in a different light, and healing a whole nother part of that same thing. It's just different perspectives as we go, as we get more enlightened.
Right. I like that. I like the spiral staircase and the fact that it is not linear, which is also something we discussed last week. But hopefully, it's not going to be linear, but, it's going to be ups and downs. But, we talked about that. We hope that when it comes down, it doesn't dip back way deep beyond where you started. It might dip sometimes, but, we want to keep it kind of going uphill.
Yeah.
Even though we might have some ebbs and flows in there.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you're still pointed in the right direction and, you're still moving forward, that's the key. We're going to make mistakes, and you know what? We get to learn from them and we get to do better from them. So make the mistakes, do what you have to do to learn, and just keep moving toward the goal, and you will get there, and grab the assistance along the way. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help. It takes a village, not just to raise a child, but to be humans.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. But I also, again, I'm sure you've had some, I'll call them a tough nut to crack, because that they're just holding that so deep inside, or holding on to it so tightly, for fear of what will happen once they let it go. How can you help ease somebody's fear of that, of, what might happen when they let it go?
Well,
Or let it out.
I can, so I can give you my own testimony. I mean, it's not an easy process, but it is worth it. It's hard to let go, but once you do, and once you truly begin to embody, who it is you want to be and how you want to create the world around you, in a sense. I know that sounds, but it does. How you feel is what's really creating your little reality. I'm not saying everybody else, but your little reality, your bubble. So you have to feed yourself with, what you need to get the positive out. It's a process, and sometimes it's a lot of crying, and sometimes there's shame involved. We come across something that we're not proud of because we realized, oh crap, I did that. Ooh, ouch, sure. But you know what? That's where you have grace with yourself. Like, are you going to do it again now? Or are you going to do something different? Are you going to try to be better because of what you learned? As long as you are, then you're doing the right thing. You're moving forward. You can't change what already happened. All you can do is make better of the future.
Right. A friend of mine posted on Facebook recently, like something, I don't remember how he phrased it, but what's something like about you that you were afraid to tell because of how people might react to you. And, even though when I was younger, college, right after high school, I was, very outspoken, never 100% owned up to being a survivor of sexual abuse, of incest. And what I'd written on his post was that I was afraid. I was afraid to tell people that I was a survivor of incest, because I didn't want them to pity me. I didn't want them to see me differently than what they did. Because, I get it when people say, hey, what do you do, Hope? I'm like, oh, I'm a hospice social worker. And they're like, oh, because it's like this, I'm working with dying people. But I felt that I would always get that same kind of reaction, that pity reaction from people, and that they would look at me differently, knowing that I was a survivor of incest. But I've actually learned the opposite. So that's my testimony.
That's awesome.
Is that I've learned the opposite, that people, haven't looked at me differently. And maybe they were like, oh, it kind of makes sense now why she's, does ABCD, because I'm very outspoken, and I'm very much about community and helping people. So I feel like people do fear that they're going to be looked at differently if they let go of their trauma, or they let people know they have trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That goes for a lot of people. I mean, there's, you know, plenty of things that I really took me a while to even admit to myself, let alone anybody else. You know,
Right.
it's really, it's hard, you know, yes, you have to come clean. You have to tell the truth. It's there and affecting you anyway.
Right.
So why not? You
And that's,
know, yeah, it's hard, but it
yeah.
is worth it because you feel so free and so much lighter, and you can actually find true happiness because you
Right.
can learn how, you
Right.
know, it
But
is worth it.
I feel also like people already see it. They already see something. Like I remember, when I told my basketball coach what happened to me, and he's like, I kind of already knew,
Because some
and
people pick up on the little signals.
right.
And
And
that's kind of like I was saying with getting to know, you know, one of my patients or clients, you know, getting some of those little things in their behaviors, like their
right.
mannerisms.
Right.
Um, you know, even that plays into it. It's not just about the certain way you sit, certain way if you are constantly fidgeting, you know, there's different things that little things that can be picked up on that can be indicative of something.
Right.
Likely, he must have known of somebody else. There was probably an
Sure,
experience
sure.
that he's had that's taught him those signs.
Right. Well, I mean, again, he was a coach and a teacher, so I'm sure, he had come across those things on more than one occasion, sadly. Um, and I know one of the things I talked to you about was I'd love to do a whole show on attachment styles, but
Yeah.
and I feel that when you look at an anxious attachment style, when you look at an avoidant attachment style or a dismissive avoidant attachment style, that those all relate back to trauma. And and I feel that as an individual, once you understand your attachment style, then you will have a better you'll have better tools to move forward to try
Mhm.
to work through that, because some people are like, oh, I'm never going to change. Well, I don't call it change, I call it growth.
Right. That's the
If
difference, though. Changing is changing, like changing a different, totally different being. You're still you, and you're using your moral compass and your values in order to guide you in the direction you should go in to get better results, right? So at the end of the day, if you look at it results driven, okay, if you're doing something the same way over time and you're banging your head against the wall each time, you're not getting anywhere, right? What do? We want to change something to get a better result, right? So
right.
it's the same concept. You're behaving in a certain way over and over, and you're getting the same result. Why not try to change the behavior? That's not changing who you are. It's changing a behavior.
Right.
Behaviors aren't who you are.
And right, in order to get the outcome that you had intended, initially anyway. Yeah.
Exactly.
I love vision boards. So I'm a huge, because if you think, I think of like the public administration, part of my background is, you work on a strategic plan. Now, what is my strategic plan for my company, my nonprofit, what have you, for the next year, the next 3 years, the next 5 years? And I feel like we could do that as people, as well. Where do you see this all the time? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Or my friend who is a business coach, he's like, unless you come up with a plan, you're going to be the same place next year as you are this year. Is that Miss Liliana?
Yeah, she's starting to squirm. I'm going to get her. I'll stay
Yeah, go
on. I
ahead.
just got to go pick her up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if y'all remember Christine being with me once before, but she has I call her Princess Liliana, and she's going to go grab her and she's going to make her part of the show. Now, do not put all your attention on Liliana, even though she's absolutely gorgeous. We're talking about some good stuff here. I'm just kidding. We're actually
Yeah,
coming to
I'll
where
sit
we're
here with
winding
her.
down.
I'll sit here with her. Ah, okay.
I think Kendall's trying to direct me to the comments. Megan, thank you, Megan. Yes, learning to cope is the only way to get results. Yes. So absolutely. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Megan.
you.
Great things. Yeah, thanks. But yeah, learning to cope. But and then again, it's looking at everyone's traumas and helping them with the tools in order to be able to cope, because everybody's coping mechanisms are different. everyone has different levels of coping skills. So it's working with that individual to get their coping skills to where they need to be. And everybody's going to be different on that. And, like Christine was saying, it's really, really better to have somebody that you can bounce those things off of, in order to give you that feedback to make sure that you're on the right course.
Yeah.
Hi, Lily.
Say hi, Auntie Hope. Say hi.
She'll be talking soon, and then she'll have to come on the show by herself and do her own show.
Yeah, right. Look,
Hi,
it's you.
girl.
Say hi. Say hi.
So, for me, I feel like, it's different when you're the parent because you have to do the every single minute of the every single day. But, I do get to spend time with little Miss Lily there. And for me, that's a great stress relief. She can cry a little bit.
Though.
But no, I mean, it's different when you're the parent, you're there 24/7. And I have grandchildren. So, you see all these jokes about people saying, I don't know who that person is. Because when we were growing up, she was nothing like that. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Megan says she used to work in psych rehab.
Yeah.
And I feel that you're different when it's your grandkids because you're not there 24/7. And yep, absolutely. And Megan is saying that you have to learn the kind of coping skills that work for you. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you have to be willing to try new things because you never really know. Because if you haven't actually tried something, you're not going to know what it actually does for you. Because, like, for instance, all right, I don't want to run or whatever. I'm just using running as an example. But you know what? When I did start finally running for a little bit, even though I was told to then stop, but yeah, right. But I realized what it was doing for me. Like I was getting better. I seen the improvement. I felt better. I felt stronger. I'm like, all right, I kind of like this. It's not so much that I always liked running.
No.
It was I liked what I was benefiting from it. And if we're willing to take medication that tastes horrible, could have other side effects, to cure an ailment, why not be willing to put in a little work?
Right. But even, medication, if we're talking about medication for some sort of mental health diagnosis, it may not always be right the first time.
Not only that, it may not, medication is never going to do it all.
Right.
You have to have these other skills. You have to still change the behavior. So the medication may make the feeling better. You may feel better. But if you don't learn about yourself and the behaviors that you may be doing that may be potentially harmful for your life, how are you ever going to change that? Because medication can't change behavior.
Right. Absolutely. 100%. Let's say that again.
Medication cannot change behavior.
No, absolutely.
There is not one that can. Can it calm somebody and maybe they won't be so easily angered? Sure. It can help with that. But she still gets into that point. They're still going to get just as angry. They're still going to behave in the same way. Right. It just might take a little more to get them there because they're a little calmer.
Sure.
Yes, that helps. And that's a great tool to help you while you're learning about yourself so that it starts to move in that direction. But until you put the work into yourself, you're not going to feel like you've healed anything.
Right. Megan's saying hello to Liliana. Oh, see, I think Lily's the star of the show.
Give big smiles. Now she's going to get shy.
Aw. She's all right. So, we're probably winding down here. This has been a great conversation. Is there anything else that you can think like maybe that we missed? I know we talked just, all over the map about, trauma and development and what have you. Anything else that you feel that, would be beneficial for anyone, no matter what type of trauma or where they're at?
Definitely. Oh gosh, so many, there's a flood of things that came into my mind. Kind of hard to answer that.
Which was the first one then? That's usually what I go with.
The first one is definitely, if you recognize there's a trauma, seek some help, get some guidance. Doesn't mean you have to take medication or anything like that. You can just do therapy, even if you just started just to kind of safeguard yourself. Get some basis of what to look for, get some information. Um, and also, be kind with yourself. You know, um, we don't we take on the blame of things that are really other people's stuff way too often.
Right.
And sometimes we're just the collateral. It really doesn't, most of the time we're just the collateral. What other people do usually have more to do with the way they feel about themselves at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Same with us. What we do is a
Right.
reflection of the way we feel about ourselves, the way we treat other people. It's a reflection of ourselves. We are all but mirrors,
Right.
So, having some grace and understanding that, it's okay to ask for help. And we all have had something. We don't really make it to this age without something having
No, it's
affected us
true.
in some way, shape, or form. It's just not how life goes.
Absolutely. And we could have the best life, ever. And something traumatic happened, maybe, you were told, and I know this sounds silly, like a joke, but I don't mean it this way, because my personality, so I think you could probably see it as a joke. But you're a child and you're told that, oh, your dog went to go live on the farm with so and so, but in reality it died. And we see this on television, movies, what have you. And maybe later on that you learn that the dog died and you were lied to and said it went to live on a farm. That could be traumatic.
Absolutely, because think about what that does to your trust. You now, you have knowledge that isn't real.
Right.
You have lived for how long believing one thing, and it's just ripped out from under you. And then, not to mention, that usually comes from the people that you're supposed to be able to trust the most.
Right.
So, which is why I never really, suggest lying to kids like that at all. You don't have to tell them the whole truth. You don't
Right.
have to give details, but you should be truthful, because when they find out that you aren't, even if it was for the best of reasons, it still leaves a lasting effect on them, because they have to now process that new information.
Right. And in reality, I mean, we're not protecting them, we're harming them. But, by telling the truth, Spot was old and Spot passed away. He wasn't in pain, he was peaceful. And
Right.
It's the cycle of life, circle of life, however you want to call it. Let's go watch The Lion King. I mean, whatever, however you handle it. But, we're teaching, now this is a teaching moment, a learning moment, and an opportunity to talk about the child's feelings about it and possibly even become closer. Because I feel like a lot of, and especially males, especially of a certain age, like we're talking like, well, Gen Xers in general, but, is that, males were have been taught to not show their feelings, not show their emotions. And, if we allow children to have that emotion as a child, that will make them more comfortable with emotions as an adult.
Absolutely. And not only that, we think that we're protecting their feelings, really. I don't want them to have to feel bad or sad or whatever. But when they do learn, they're going to feel that sadness. And not only that, we can't protect them from everything. The people and animals and pets and whatever, they're going to pass away around them throughout their entire life. If it's not this one, it's going to be the next one.
Right.
There's going to be different things that you're going to want to shield your child from that they're going to experience anyway. And the more you do that, the harder you're kind of making it on them, because the earlier we learn how to deal through some of these things, the better off we are in the long haul. Being emotionally regulated, that's a big issue in society. That's a whole nother topic.
No, absolutely.
Emotional regulation is key.
Right.
Emotional regulation is key. And we need to teach that. It doesn't just happen, because at our core, we are animals ourselves, and then thus guided by our inner feelings and even suspicions. That's how animals protect themselves, right? So we have that instinct within us, but we also have our brains to overpower that instinct. So that's basically what you're going to have is a primal society at the end of the day without teaching emotional regulation.
Right. Right.
And that doesn't really look good.
No.
I think we're better civilized. Oh, I'm losing my earpiece.
There we go. Well, I think we are going to wrap it up. We've gotten Lily's input. She gives us the thumbs up. And we'd like to thank our viewers here this evening and our comments. And just a reminder that this will remain on our YouTube channel. We are the PA Empowerment Network. Go ahead and like this video, but also hit that subscribe button. It is free. It does not cost anything. Hi, Miss Lily.
She's trying to grab the phone.
And, because we'd love for you to be part of the Empowerment Network along with us. I want to thank our amazing guests, Christine Higgins and Miss Liliana, for, again, having a wonderful discussion and really helping to educate our community. So thank you, Christine. And thank you, everybody. Please like and share this video. And we'll see you next Monday. Thank you, everyone. This has been Mental Health Mondays with Hope. Have a great week.